Okay. Now I gotta go over here real quick. Okay, I'm gonna get this posted up here. Okay. Readjust this real quick. So, first thing I want to address today, where was that list? So, first thing I wanted to address today was the Kansas trans license issue. So, we might have seen some of that popping up other places. Let's see, I had a post mentioning that. Think this is it? No, that's not it. That's. Anyways, so there's this issue with laws being changed down in Kansas. Basically, they're changing things up. So if you're trans and you've already gone through the process of having your gender markers changed on your ID and your what do you call it, your birth certificate and that. So like you're really far along into the transition process at this point. Like you're somebody who's had bottom surgery at this point. They're making these changes so like people who are like this far along into their process and that they can no longer have, you know, if you're male to female, you can't have female on your driver's license unless you were born, you know, genetically female or however you want to prefer, however you prefer to word it. I never been great at trying to figure out how to word this stuff, even myself being trans, but whatever, you know. So I just figured I'd go ahead and pull this up. It's the actual Senate bill that they brought out for it. So we have the bill title is House Senate Bill or House Substitute for SB 244 by Committee on Judiciary, requiring the designation of multi-occupancy private spaces in public buildings for use by only one sex and imposing criminal and civil penalties for violations, defining the term for violations, comma, defining the term gender to mean biological sex at birth for purposes of statutory construction, directing the division of vehicles to invalidate and reissue driver's license when necessary to correct gender identification. So that's the part that I was just talking about a second ago. The directing the division of vehicles, so that the DMV, to invalidate and reissue driver's license. So basically, literally, the second this passed into law, if you were trans and you had a driver's license that said, say you're like me, you're male to female, you have a driver's license that says you're female, even though in the hospital when you were born they said, oh, this is a male. Basically what this is saying, okay, all of those people like that, if they've got a driver's license that says that they're female right now, that driver's license is no longer valid. So those people who were on the road driving the second this passed, like, bam, your license is invalid. You get pulled over, go to jail for having an invalid license. Directing the division of vehicles to invalidate and reissue driver's license when necessary to correct gender identification on such licenses, and directing the Office of Vital Statistics to invalidate and reissue birth certificates when necessary to correct the sex identification on such certificates. So what this part here means, the directing the Office of Vital Statistics to invalidate and reissue birth certificates, what that means is the people who have gone all the way through the transition process, all the way to the end, and they are at the point where they're now, they've had the bottom surgery, if they're going to have bottom surgery, and whatever is necessary by state law standard in that area to get the sex marker on the birth certificate changed by law. They've already met those thresholds, but the state's now saying, okay, no, those don't matter. There's nothing you can do to have this changed at all. So all of these people who have had their identity paperwork and that changed, it's being nullified by the state in Kansas. And one thing that I'm having an issue with this is that I don't understand. Say you've gone through this process entirely out of state. You're not living in you weren't living in Kansas at the time that you went through your transition and got all your paperwork changed to that. What happens to people like that? Like, does this only affect people who were Kansas residents now and in the future, or I went all the way through my transition and finished that and went and go ahead and I moved to Kansas from New York. Do I then, if all of my paperwork was changed before I moved, does it then become invalid when I move into Kansas, or how does that work? So that's the question. One question that I have. I'm hoping maybe we'll get that question answered by reading through some of this. Obviously it's very dry looking. It's a lot of very long legal text, so it might take a minute to get through. I don't normally try to read things like this out loud. I usually take several days to try and break something like this down, because it can take me a minute to understand what they're trying to say. I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people, because legal jargon is not meant for people like us to understand. It's meant for people with legal education to understand. Anyways, so Senate Bill number 244 by Committee on Judiciary, we have, so starting at line 1, an act concerning release prior to trial, minimum appearance bond premium, prohibiting and compensated surety, from making a loan for certain portions of the minimum appearance bond premium required. So I'm not exactly sure what that means. I think that's pertaining to something else. Be it enacted by legislature of the state of Kansas, Section 1, CSA, hereby amended to read as follows: as used in this section, compensated surety means any person or entity that is organized under the law of the state of Kansas that as surety issues appearance bonds for compensation, posts bail for four or more persons in a calendar year, is responsible for any forfeiture, and is liable for appearance bonds written by such person or entities. Okay, so this is something to do with bond measures and shit. Like if you go to jail and they're gonna make you pay a bond to be able to get out in between your trial and your conviction or acquittal or whatever. So I don't know if that's pertaining to this stuff specifically that I was mentioning earlier or not, but we'll find out. Insurance agent surgery, same thing, but basically, well, it looks like the same thing, but okay. Every conspiracy. Okay, so compensated surgery who secures appearance bonds by property, yada yada. Bail agent, appearance and bond premium. Every compensated surgery the capital judge, judiciary, just yada yada. Application shall include, but is not limited to, the following information for each insurance agent property. Okay. Copy of the applicant's Kansas degree. Okay. Statement made under penalty of perjury that the applicant is a resident of this state and is not prohibited. Therefore, okay. List of bail agents authorized by such property surgery. An affidavit describing property by which such property surgery proposes to justify its obligations. May require, the chief judge of the jurisdiction may require as qualification of initial or continued authorization in the judicial district a compensated surgery to submit to a state and national criminal history record check. The fingerprint shall be used to identify the individual and determine whether the individual has a record of criminal history in this state or any other jurisdiction. The chief judge, yada yada. Okay. Authorization under the section shall pay for the costs of fingerprinting. Trying to find the section about licensing, because that was the big thing that was an issue today. I've seen a lot of people complaining about, and I don't want to say people are sensationalizing and overreacting, but you know, okay. Authorize any compensated. Such authorization is granted. Yada yada. Okay, so I'm not sure where Okay. I think I know what this one was. I think this is wasn't this? I think this is the. Yeah. Okay. So um. Okay. So I got confused for a minute. So okay. Uh. SB 244 is not the licensing bill. It's actually the it's a bathroom bill basically. So what this is saying is basically it's creating like this bounty hunter program when it comes to trans people using the bathroom and stuff. Basically, what they want to do, or what they're in the active process of doing, is passing a law that basically says that, if we catch you using the wrong bathroom, or somebody thinks you're using the wrong bathroom, they can sue you for $1,000 in damages, or well, of at least $1,000. It says, right there. Um, but basically, it's the idea of it is that they're going to be like, oh, we can always tell you're trans, and they'll be able to point people out and sue them for emotional damages or stuff like that. They'll claim that it was some kind of sexual assault or physical assault just by being in the room. But anyways, okay. Um, the thing with the bathroom bill. So basically, what they're doing, it, the whole idea behind it is just this right wing talking point that they constantly try to push and perpetuate, that trans people are monsters and they're horrible and they're just freaks and they're out to get your kids and hurt you. And the only reason a trans person wants to go into the women's bathroom, which I find it funny, because it always just, oh, the women's bathroom, forgetting that trans men exist. There are people who were born female, transition to male. They do exist. They're just not talked about as much, which honestly, it might be a bit of a privilege thing, because oh, why does that say it's not recording? Because they is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Anyways, they don't really consider that when they're doing the bathroom bill hate stuff, because I wow, brain fart. Anyways, I lost my train of thought. Okay. I remember where I was going. So it's gonna sound a little, and I'm sorry if I offend anyone out there, but I feel like the FTM community, they have a little bit easier in terms of like not being as judged by the general community, because I mean, getting testosterone into your system and having it work to overcome what estrogen has already done in early puberty is a lot easier, medically speaking, than the other way around, because estrogen can only do so much. It can't stop facial hair from growing. It can't make your voice lighter and more feminine than that. It can't change your skeletal structure in that. But when you start taking testosterone, those people, they have the advantage that testosterone will make you grow facial hair. It will give you a deeper voice. It will, somewhat change your skeletal structure. It won't change how your bones are aligned in that, but it will change the density of them, and it will change how they move and they feel and how you move. But anyways, it's I'm just getting off topic and rambling there, but yeah, the bathroom bill shit. It's really just kind of irritating because like we just want to pee. Trans people just want to pee. That's all. You know. It's every time too that you hear these big horror stories. Oh, the trans people in the bathroom molesting children, spying on women, blah blah. It's never actually like genuinely a trans person. That's the thing. Like, it's always some weirdo who gets their fucking kicks by dressing up as a woman and pretending. Like, it's not. It's really hard to explain because like I know there's a lot of trans people out there that probably have like the same feeling and experience I do of being an imposter and feeling like you're pretending to be something you're not, no matter which way you're going, no matter who you are. Like, I just it's a really complicated subject. It's hard to broach, especially when you're talking about it alone. It would be an easier thing to try and discuss if I had other people giving input, but I can't really say much on that, so anyways, I originally wanted to talk about, where is it? This is another one. This is the don't say trans bill that you're hearing people talk about. This one I've heard is going to be a fun one to deal with. This is at the national level. So the idea of this reclassifying how certain things are discussed and what constitutes sexually inappropriate material for minors and whatnot. Unfortunately, as you can see down here in the bottom, involves gender dysphoria or transgenderism, involves sexually oriented material. So sexually oriented material, they're going to say, oh, pornographic material and this, that, but unfortunately, what that does affect out and out all around is genuine sex ed material. So, they're going to be like, oh, well, kids don't need to be learning about queer identities and that and sex ed and blah, 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 blah. If they're going to learn about anything at all, okay, you're gonna teach kids sex ed. It's going to happen no matter what. But you're going to sit there and say, oh, we should only teach them the sex ed for what we agree with. So, we're not going to say that, hey, even if you're gay, that doesn't mean that you can't get an STD. That's the kind of sex ed that people that people are talking about giving to kids, like in the high school setting or the middle school setting. Like when I was in middle school is when they started doing sex ed. It wasn't very in-depth, but they started doing, biological explanations of the shit. It was basically the way it started, it was Charlie's got the zoomies. Let's see, maybe we'll get a Lily? Oh, almost. Charlie's got the zooms. So basically what I was saying, we started doing the health unit, if you want to call it that, and the sex ed unit. So the health unit started out 5th grade. That was basically, your basic biology shit. It was, here's how phenotype, or here's how genetics work to combine and make this, your dominance, your recessive, things like that. And then we talked about things like DNA strands and how it affects your the diseases you can get, your eye color, your hair color, all sorts of things like that. Which that's very basic biology. There's a lot more that goes into, what affects your eye color and your hair color than just, your genetics, the environment, a whole bunch of things. Anyways, we're not trying to make this a whole biology lecture today. Anyways, the following year, 6th grade, that was when we started the actual, sex ed part of sex ed. And what that was mostly, it was very brief, I will say that. I think it was maybe a month at most, and that sounds like a lot of time, but you gotta figure, okay, we're only going to school weekdays, Monday through Friday, so 5 days a week. This class was only happening... Lady, hey. No, I tapped the desk. I know. But it's we're only doing that class enough. Charles, go. But anyways, so the class we're only doing that twice a week for freaking 2 days a week, 4 weeks in a month is 4 classes of that. So it sounds like a long time to be doing sex ed as a subject in class, but then, we're not really doing it that long because in reality it's only 8 class sessions total that are 40 minutes long, so maybe maximum 3.5, 4 hours total that we're talking about this. But, it was very basic sex ed shit, and they didn't touch on much outside of, sexual for the straight and monogamous sexual orientation stuff, They didn't explain to us this, oh, well, there's some people who are attracted to people who are the same sex and gender as them. There are people who aren't attracted to the same sex and gender as them, And I know that's partly too because when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, it's still very much dealing with the don't say gay stuff. We don't teach the kids about gays, that kind of thing. But wow, brain fart again. Anyways, it's I knew around that age though that when we were doing those units in school that there was something a little different about me. I wasn't I couldn't obviously articulate at the time that I was trans. I didn't know it 100%, but I was having thoughts and stuff that obviously would lead someone to those conclusions if they had been spoken about openly and the conversations had been had. But that stuff wasn't taught in sex ed and that but yeah, I don't know. I guess I rambled and got lost on that subject. But let's see. Let's get a better look at this. Prohibiting funding for sexually oriented material. Okay. In general, no funding under this act may be used to develop, implement, facilitate, host, or promote any program or activity for or to provide or promote literature or other materials to children under the age of 18 that includes sexually oriented material, including any program, activity, literature, or material that exposes such children to nude adults, individuals who are stripping, or lewd or lascivious dancing. Rules of construction. Nothing in this subsection shall be construed to prohibit the use of funds under the Act for or otherwise limit or interfere with teaching. Standard science coursework including biology, botany, zoology, microbiology, ecology, or cytology, genetics, yada yada, attacks of major world religions, classic works of literature or classic works of art definitions. Sexually oriented material that includes any depiction, description, or simulation of sexually explicit conduct as defined in subparagraphs A and B of section 2256(2) of Title 18 United States Code, or involves gender dysphoria or transgenderism. Okay. So we need I'm going to copy that. Pop you in here. Okay, A and B. Sexually explicit conduct means actual or simulated sexual intercourse, including genital, oral, anal, oral, anal, whether they be persons or the same or opposite sex. Bestiality, masturbation. Mouse just died. See, sadistic or masochistic abuse or lascivious exhibition of the anus, genitals, or pubic area of any person for purposes of subsection 8b of the section means graphic sexual intercourse including genital yada yada. Okay, so, hmm. Yeah, that's a fun one. So basically, they're just saying with this here that fucking literally you can't read, write, talk, text, nothing about fucking anything transgender at around children at schools. Strawberry chunk. Okay. So, what was that in relation to 7906? Oh, prohibited use of funds was what 7906 was. Ba 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 ba. Yeah. Prohibited use of funds. No funds under this chapter may be used to provide sex education or HIV prevention education in schools unless the instruction is age appropriate and includes the health benefits of abstinence. So basically, they're just going to say that if you're under the age of 18, there is no appropriate way to teach you about HIV or any like fucking STIs or STDs or that. And so they're going to say, nope, you can't do that. You're breaking the law. Can't use funds to operate a program of contraceptive distribution in schools. So if you're living in one of those places where there's high rates of teen pregnancy and that, nope, no more sex education to try and get kids to stop doing that. So that's a fun one to deal with. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Okay, well, at least that one is just genuinely being fair across the board. And I have no issues to take with it. Right there, whether homosexual or heterosexual. Only issue I could have to take with it if it was specifically just against homosexual and there was no mention of heterosexual. Like, oh, so great, you're okay with your kid boinking if it's just the way God wants it. But we're being fair here. It's both. Yes, that both is the ones who need to be addressed in that. Okay. There was. Boom. Mm. So yeah, that's what's going on in the news legal wise with all that shit. Fun stuff, I know, right? Great time to be a trans person in America. Who doesn't love that? On a lighter side, we do have some more uplifting news to deal with. Where was that? What was his name? So the other day we did have Leo Cundiff, I think his name is, trans man, jumped off a bridge, from what I heard of an initial story, into a lake in Chicago to save a baby that was in a stroller. Let's see. So Leo Cundiff. All right. So Leo does have. Oh, it was 8 days ago. 8 days ago, this happened, or the GoFundMe was started. But let's see. Chicago Tribune. Hopefully, it's not behind a paywall. Lincoln Square man saved a baby from Lake Michigan. He may joke about it on stage. Okay, so Leo Cundiff sat on a bench at Belmont Harbor Wednesday afternoon, calling his aunt to wish her a happy belated birthday. He had time to kill before his shift as a server and barista at Oak and Honey, and decided to spend the unusually warm and windy day outside in the Lincoln Park. That's when he heard the screams. 30-year-old said he looked up to see a woman chasing after a baby rolling toward the water in a stroller. The strong wind, the National Weather Service warned of winds between 20 to 30 miles an hour with gusts of up to 50, blew the stroller away from her, Cundiff said, and she wasn't going to catch it in time. The stroller went in the water, and Cundiff said the woman stood in shock. Quote, and so I jumped in. Cundiff said, my only thing was, you got to get this baby out of here. If she's going down, I'll go down with her, but the goal is to get us both up. Treading water for at least 3 or 4 minutes, holding onto the stroller to keep it afloat. He and the baby, an 8-month-old, according to the police, went under a few times. Cundiff said the water temperature was in the mid-30s. National Weather Service data shows. So, man threw down his jacket for Cundiff to hold on until a life preserver was found. Cundiff said the man and the woman helped Cundiff and the stroller up the ladder to safety. Cundiff and the baby went to separate ambulances. He said the baby went to Lurie Children's Hospital in good conditions, according to the police. For those who know Cundiff, his reaction is no surprise. Karen Cundiff, his mother, said he has always helped and connected with others. She recalled that when Cundiff was a teenager, he made a point to shake hands with every person experiencing homelessness he came across one day on vacation. As she should be. Do. That right there is kind of important. So, but Cudliff said the harsh criticism has he's seen online that the woman with the baby was careless isn't accurate. He said he didn't talk to the woman after they were out of the water. She was hysterical and there was a language barrier, but he hopes she's doing all right. When you almost lose your kid like that, you don't need the world judging you too, especially when it wasn't trying anything on purpose. Cundiff said there was no neglect or anything like that. It was just a freak accident. So that's really cool. But yeah, so Lincoln Square Man saves baby. So that was this one that I showed you. That is, gimme. Where are you? There you are. Yep, that is our man. So that's really kind of cool. Oh, ba da ba ba ba. So what else do we got going on? Do 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 do. Uh. Yeah, right. What else do we got going on? Yet again, another reason I said fuck Amazon about a year ago. We don't do Amazon. Well, I don't do Amazon. The rest of my family does, but I mean, pick your battles. Alright, I am stepping away for a moment. Enjoy the screen. I am back. Do. Problem with this is these are already 2024. Oh, how we've come in 2 years. Boom, 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 boom. Literacy's been fucking gone for years. U.S. is horrible when it comes to literacy. Do 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 do. See, step 6 is the loss of active bystanders. So when the trans community shows that a politician has stopped being an ally to us, take it seriously instead of defending them. Don't pressure trans people to stay silent. Pressure the politicians. We call out to stop participating in trans genocide. It's a little difficult to read. Let's see. Step 6, loss of active bystanders. Over time, public leaders abandoned defending the rights of the out group, allowing further dehumanization, marginalization, and right erosion. Polarization, increasing insecurity prompts the dominant group to amplify its identity and form a narrative about an out-group, viewing them as outsiders. Stereotyping, perpetrators use stereotypes relying on biased characteristics, physical appearance, genetics, race, etc., to negatively portray the group, or the out group. Step 3, scapegoating. Once negative traits are established, blaming the outgroup becomes easier, reinforcing an us versus them narrative. Step 4, discrimination and dehumanization. The targeted group may face exclusion through illegal statuses, enabling discriminatory laws, segregation, denial of basic rights and resources. Dehumanization. This stage employs propaganda and hate speech to dehumanize the targeted group, portraying them as subhuman or dangerous. And then the loss of active bystanders. Step 7, repression. Liberty. Enough. Liberty limits limits and repression emerge with tolerated violence, graffiti, public incitement, name-calling, and frequent raids on offices based on discriminatory laws. Step 8, persecution. Repression and violence become systemic with more frequent arrests and detentions of group members for perceived violations of discriminatory laws. Step 9, organized violence and killings. Planned violence and widespread against the outgroup, including famines, denial of humanitarian aid, scorched earth policies causing mass displacement, and organized violence. And then step 10, denial. Perpetrators or later generations deny the existence of any crime. For instance, Holocaust deniers, or for instance, the regime of Omar al-Bashir in Sudan denied any crimes in Darfur. So that's the 10 steps of genocide for anybody who doesn't know. Yeah, I know the FBI is keeping tabs on us. And by the way, fuck you, FBI. Fuck you, Trump. I can swear because I'm not monetized, so I don't have to worry about that. And I also got to worry about losing sponsors because I don't have any. That's the kind of cool thing about being broke. You got nothing to lose. Reminder, the patriarchy needs rigid gender binary to survive. No mistake, Kansas recent. Yeah. I want to do stuff to like financially help, but A, I'm broke, like I just mentioned, and B, like I always feel like stuff like this is like a trap to collect data, but like at the same time I'm live streaming and like I'm very openly trans on the internet, so they know who I am. Yep, the bathroom bounty hunter thing we were going over earlier. Steve's he's a riot. I'm sure some of you people know who he is, but like you gotta give him a listen. Oh my god, that shit, the fucking State of the Union, ugh. That shit was crazy. That, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that they're making that a thing. Let's not have medical experimentation on trans people in prison. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Bum 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 bum. Do 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 do. Ha ha. I can't say this enough. Fuck Trump. Honestly, no, what is going on in Cuba? Screen grab on reporting of the activities in water surrounding Cuba from the New York Times. I don't subscribe, so quickly snapped a picture before it was blocked. Trump has threatened tariffs on countries that supply oil to Cuba, so this isn't just about USA or Venezuela. Venezuelan oil blockage. He's starving out a nation of people in hopes of stealing the nation. Cuba is confronting the United States' first effective blockade since the Cuban Missile Crisis and running out of fuel fast, pushing the nation toward a humanitarian crisis and its government to the edge of collapse, according to a New York Times analyst of shipping data and satellite images. Cuban tankers have hardly left the island's shores for months. Oil-rich allies have halted shipments or declined to come to the rescue of the U.S. military. Has declined to come to the rescue. U.S. military has seized ships that have supported Cuba, and in recent days, vessels roaming the Caribbean Sea in search of fuel for Cuba. For fuel. Okay. And in recent days, vessels roaming the Caribbean Sea in search of fuel for Cuba have come up empty or been intercepted by U.S. authorities. Last week, a tanker linked to Cuba burned fuel for 5 days to get to the port in Caracal. I hope I pronounced that right. But then left without cargo, according to ship tracking data. 3 days later, U.S. Coast Guards intercepted a tanker full of Colombian fuel en route to Cuba that had gotten within 70 miles of the island, the data showed. While President Trump has pledged to halt any oil headed to Cuba, the Trump administration has stopped short of calling its policy a blockade. That's not the one we wanted. We wanted that. Okay. Okay. Close that. Ba, 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 ba. Cuba's ambassador to Canada told MPs on Tuesday that the United States is suffocating an entire people and creating an economic and humanitarian crisis, and urged Ottawa to follow through with a promised aid package. A U.S. oil blockade has curtailed fuel and basic supplies to the increasingly isolated Caribbean island as Trump administration puts pressure on Cuba's socialist government. Speaking before the House Foreign Affairs Committee Tuesday afternoon, Ambassador Rodrigo Malmerica, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Diaz, said the lack of fuel has affected every aspect of the life in the country, from food distribution to education to public health. The objective of this oil blockade is clear: to create a humanitarian crisis and to try to force regime change through it, the ambassador told the MPs. So, for people who don't know much about Cuba, that really is a big issue, not having fuel there for them, because they don't have a whole lot of infrastructure to self-sustain the island. Like, they have no natural gas resources that I know of. If they do, I believe they're actually under U.S. military control, which is really kind of fucked up. But yeah, and then like the reason why like you need fuel in that for like why it's affecting the public health is because you need fuel to run the generators. You need the probably natural gases and that coming in for the hospital to heat it and all that. But anyways. The objective of this oil blockade is clear: to create a humanitarian crisis and try to force regime change through it. The ambassador told MPs that the collective punishment of a whole nation is an unjustifiable crime. One may disagree with the country's political project, but there is no right whatsoever that justifies a great power based on its economic and military might interfering in its internal affairs, violating its independence. Much less acceptable is a superpower attempting to achieve its objectives by suffocating an entire people. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand told reporters earlier Tuesday ahead of cabinet meetings that Ottawa was preparing an aid package. Was preparing an aid package but could not share details ahead of its announcement in the coming days. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister said on February 13th that Canada was working on providing some sort of humanitarian relief to the island. I appreciate very much the discussion or the news that the Canadian government is considering to approve a package of aid for Cuba. Diaz said Cuba had been weathering the economic hardship before U.S. President Donald Trump effectively cut off oil shipments to the island by blockading its chief supplier, Venezuela, and threatening tariffs on any country that stepped in to fill the void. So that actually makes the Venezuelan raid from, what was it, a couple months back, make a bit more sense, because going in and cutting off Venezuela from the inside, you ensure that no matter what, they're not going to get their shit through to Cuba, and then you can choke Cuba out. I'm not saying it's a good move, I'm just saying strategically it does make sense. That is the move you would pull. Okay, Mexico. Another major supplier suspended oil shipments after Trump's threat, which, hang on. One moment. Mexico, another major supplier, suspended oil shipments after Trump's threat, which came alongside a declaration that Cuba represents an unusual and extraordinary national security threat to the U.S. due to the alleged harboring of foreign terrorist groups and Russian and Chinese intelligence bases. So that basically, Mexico was saying that they weren't going to sell oil to Cuba because they are allegedly harboring terrorist groups from Russia and Chinese intelligence. Okay. That statement is ridiculous, Diaz said Tuesday. This entire aggressive escalation against Cuba is based on a campaign of lies. However, we must ask, is the United States acting in accordance with international law in the UN chapter? Does anybody have the right to impose his will by force against another nation? After the U.S. captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in early January, Trump predicted Cuba's government was ready to fall next. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told senators at a hearing last month that he would love to see a change in the regime, but added the U.S. wouldn't make that change. Okay, well, that's obviously fucking bullshit, but this, like I said, makes more sense now. And that was, ready to fall. No, fucker, you were not. It wasn't ready to fall. You were ready to start fucking with them. You just needed to make sure you cut off their help. What does Levitt have to say?
When I went through menopause, I was
of course, an ad.
What was happening to my hair? I started taking
I hate ads.
My hair regained its thick.
Pause that so you guys don't have to hear that, because I'm not getting paid for that. YouTube's not getting paid for that. None of us are getting paid for that, so I really don't need to.
It's increasingly being described as a humanitarian crisis. What is a successful outcome for the U.S. that the U.S. wants to see in Cuba? Is there anything less than regime change that would be considered success?
I think, as Secretary Rubio has articulated, and the President himself, we obviously want to see flourishing and prosperous democracies all over the world, especially in our own hemisphere. I'm not dictating any actions the United States may take to get there, but of course that's in the United States' best interest to have Cuba be a truly free and prosperous democracy. Unfortunately, right now, that is not the case. They are a regime that is falling, their country is collapsing, and that's why we believe it's in their best interest to make very dramatic changes very soon, and we'll see what they decide to do.
Okay. So basically she's just full of shit. I mean, we know Cuba's not been in the best shape for a while, but it's hardly their fault. It hardly has anything to do with their governing policies, and a lot more to do with the fact that the U.S. and other major capitalist players in the global economy won't let socialism fly. Just no matter where it's going on, whether it's good or bad, we just will not let it run its course. I mean, I will admit, yes, we have not seen a form of socialism governance work successfully yet. But we have yet to see an example that hasn't been interfered with by outside sources like the U.S. government. So, is it really fair to say that out-and-out socialism does not work as a whole? No. Is it fair to say that it's the perfect solution? No. Anyways. Attempts by some committee members to ask Diaz about the Cuban government's human rights record, including allegations of jailing political activists, were objected to by being outside the scope of the meeting's focus on current humanitarian crisis. I mean, I get it. Yeah, we're gonna point fingers at shit that makes you look bad and be like, well, should we really help you when you got a record and fucking doing the wrong thing here and there? But at the same time, look at us. Our country is not innocent of fucking doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing. We fucking so much lately that's just not been right. So like for our country to say that, like, Diaz nevertheless defended Cuba's government while acknowledging we are not perfect. Exactly, we are not perfect as Americans. They are not perfect as Cubans. Nobody on this planet is perfect. So that's a good statement right there from him. I like that. That's acknowledging it. So Diaz nevertheless defends Cuba's government while acknowledging we are not perfect. He also denied allegations that Cuba has sent its soldiers to Ukraine to fight on behalf of Russia. The fuel shortage has crippled Cuba's electricity grid and forced airlines to suspend flights from Havana's main airports. Airports warned of a month-long jet fuel shortage, threatening Cuba's struggling tourism industry that has become increasingly reliant on Canadian visitors. Sorry. I don't have my glasses, and I kind of suck at fucking reading. I'm dyslexic and stuff, so you're going to have to bear with me. Sorry. Anyways. Cuba's government has launched a fuel rationing program limiting some services and reducing office and school hours. Cuba's health minister, Jose Angel Portal Miranda, I hope I said that right, told the Associated Press last week that the country's already debilitated healthcare system has been pushed to the brink of collapse by increased U.S. sanctions threatening basic human safety. Diaz said the healthcare situation is difficult, including limited access to food, medicine, and equipment. The lack of fuel has also affected the ability to transfer patients to hospital and power medical units, he said. Cuba has a very good health system that gives access to everybody with no payments like in Canada, and we are proud of it, he said. But it is being sabotaged by the situation of the U.S. blockade. Alright, let's see what this says. Global National. Another ad. Of course. Because, my premium isn't connected to the YouTube videos in the articles. It's probably because I haven't been logged into YouTube on my Google account in forever.
For years, registered nurse Simone Feller has helped send medical supplies to Cuba with the help of tourists.
Travelers will take a suitcase of medical supplies with them and then actually bring it to a clinic or a hospital. We'll have things like face shields, lots of masks,
But with fuel shortages prompting Canadian airlines to suspend service, there's no travelers and no supplies.
The need is still there. It's very sad. I worry for the people in Cuba.
U.S. President Donald Trump's executive order imposing tariffs on countries supplying oil to Cuba has cut off a precious resource.
It's used in, energy for hospitals, clinics, old folks' homes. You could actually call this a crime against humanity because this kind of thing costs lives.
Dr. Timothy Bode sends donated medical supplies to Cuba through the Nova Scotia-Cuba Association and still hopes to send a full shipping container in April.
And as far as I know, ships can still go to Cuba with supplies. For example, Mexico has sent 2 ships to Cuba with aid.
The price of the fuel for the taxis is going up.
Jeff Goodspeed often stays in Cuba for long periods and has helped Cubans for decades in a cultural exchange. The Nova Scotian musician sends instruments to Cuban youth in the same container as Dr. Bode's medical supplies. He says Canadians and Cubans now have another shared experience, trade tensions with Trump.
Cuba's been on the front line of this thing for many years, and here they are again.
With estimates Cuba could run out of fuel in 3 months, one international development professor says things will get worse for Cubans, but other nations could step in.
If countries in the Americas and Europe take that stand, then that in itself flexes that autonomy against Trump's bellicosity in the hemisphere.
And why not send aid on behalf of the government the way Mexico is doing? Why not?
A question from nonprofits who say they're not done trying to help Cubans in crisis. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Okay. So, although Rubio and other U.S. officials have blamed Cuban economic and mismanagement for the current crisis, Diaz said the fault lies with the decades-long American economic blockade that has intensified under Trump. I honestly, Mandela effect here, I could have swore we lifted the blockade entirely back during the tail end of the Obama administration, but I could be wrong on that one. I mean, I'm obviously wrong since it's still going, apparently. I thought we ended it, but I guess not. There is a suggestion that Cuba is in this situation because it's a failed country, but it's not true, he said. If we are failed, why do they take so much interest in destroying us? That's true. You know, if they really are if they're destined to be failures, if all of the problems that they're having right now are because of their own economic policies and their own governance and that, why is the U.S. government constantly having to fuck with Cuba? It's been a non-stop thing since the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I'm pretty sure even back before that, it would be really unreasonable and naive to assume that the Cuban Missile Crisis is where everything started with Cuba, and it was the first time that the U.S. ever fucked with Cuba, so... what's your issue? Whatever. You're still going. It's all that matters. Anyways, so there's a suggestion that, so we read through that. Mark Entwistle, who served as Canada's ambassador to Cuba in the 1990s, told Global News in an interview this month that Trump's pressure campaign on Cuba puts countries like Canada in a vice grip. The Canadian government needs to manage the U.S. relationship in a smart-minded way. But at the same time, nobody wants to see a fellow country of the Americas be bullied and crushed and potentially fall into chaos, he said. Diaz urged Canada to step in and partner with other friends of Cuba and help its people. Countries like Mexico that have sent humanitarian aid, Diaz added, say that Cuban people don't deserve this. We need to help them. I think this is a good example of what can be done. So yeah, things are not really doing that great in Cuba right now. Like, we are yet again fucking treating them like shit, and that's not cool. How to hide food. That's... I wish I could get screenshots for that. Or like they would have posted screenshots of that, maybe. Yep, somebody else had the same thought I did. It's something brewing in the Gulf. Yeah, we're gonna have another Gulf War is what it seems like, but this time it's gonna be the Gulf of Mexico. Fuck you, Trumpies. It's Gulf of Mexico. That's how it will always be. Alright, what else do we got going on? Do. Gay cloaking device activated. Fucking cash. Guilty. 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 Very guilty. Guilty. Though I don't necessarily ignore my hunger. It's autism is fun. I don't always feel when I'm hungry. So, protein shakes for the win. Little mass gainer, protein powder, some strawberries and milk, and we got us a meal in a cup. Guilty. Although I've been doing good, I've cut back a lot on the caffeine. It used to be the monsters that did me dirty. Like oh my god, I love the mocha monsters so much. They are my favorite. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I haven't. It's been like 3-4 days since I've had one. So. Guilty. Although, who isn't guilty of this one? Mad guilty. So guilty, it's not even funny. Fact. Your inner critic is a fucking bitch. Yes. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Facts. You try to copy what other people do, you try to fucking do what they did to get where they is, and you are not gonna end up there. You're not gonna go from here to here. You're gonna end up starting here, and you're gonna end up like over here or over here, and you're gonna be pissed off wondering why you're not over here. And the reason you're not gonna be here is because this map wasn't meant for you. It was meant for someone else. See, what else we got going on? Oh, this guy's a... That guy out there. Sometimes he's right, but a lot of times he's just fucking talking out his ass, and it's like, my god, dude, what the fuck? Yeah. This is just a bunch of distracting garbage. Well then. Yes, I love you, Bree. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-bop. Do 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 do. I don't know why Facebook is always just showing me random people's fucking drama, but like I could do a whole live stream segment off of that. Just random fucking drama it shows me. Like, what is this? Okay. You know, it's one thing for a teacher to disagree with a parent. It's another thing entirely for a teacher public mock a parent anonymously on social media and place the mockery directly alongside tweet-filled and sexually explicit insults and hostility. Yada 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 yada. Ba 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 ba. Yeah, it's wild. I don't. Vibe coding English language as a programming language. Do 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 do. Things that matter. Bees, trans rights. I agree. That's actually a pretty cool baseball glove. But I still don't get why Facebook is showing me random people's shit. Grab his dick and twist it. Good for you, hon. Director of Barnline Film Festival will be fired this Thursday by... Let's try to accommodate German reason of state refusing to take a clear stand on the genocide in Gaza. She is losing her job anyways. This is a lesson for everyone. There's no point in appeasing far-right culture warriors. You might as well take a stand. Weimer is a fan of proto-Nazi philosopher Oswald Spengler and worries about the continuity of our own blood. He also sells access to fellow ministers for 80,000 euros, pounds, whatever, a pop. He made a career denouncing supposed left-wing cancel culture, and now as the most right-wing member of Mayor's cabinet, he uses the full power of the state to cancel artists he disagrees with. German Borgies wants a cool international film festival, and they also want zero criticism of their support for genocide. These two things are incompatible. So, essentially, she got fired even though she did exactly what everyone in the company wanted, and she should have just spoke out in the first place. That's what happened. Let's see. Bloomberg. Oh. Times Now News. Okay. So we got Times Now News. Thanks Google for just throwing my emails up like that. It's gonna have people fucking bombarding me now. That'll be awesome. Four passengers aboard a Florida-registered U.S. speedboat were killed after an exchange of gunfire. Okay, 4 passengers were shot dead by Cuban authorities on the morning of February 25th, 2026, according to a statement from Ministry of Cuban territorial waters after approaching 2 nautical mile northeast of El Pino Channel in Kyle Falcons located blah 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 blah. Boat was registered in Florida, United States under registration number FL726SH. According to the ministry, a surface unit of the border guard troops carrying 5 service members approached the speedboat for identifications. Authorities stated that the crew of the vessel opened fire on Cuban personnel, injuring the commander of the Cuban vessel. As a consequence of the confrontation, as of the time of this report, 4 aggressors on the foreign vessel were killed and 6 were injured. The statement read, the injured individuals were evacuated and provided medical assistance. Cuban officials described the vessel as a violating speedboat operating inside Cuban territorial waters. It remains unclear whether the boat was attempting to enter or leave Cuban waters at the time of the incident. No further details requiring the identities of those killed or injured have been released. In its statement, the ministry reaffirmed Cuba's commitment to protecting its territorial waters, calling national defense, yada, yada, yada. And then U.S. Congressman Carlos Gimenez, who is of Cuban descent and staunch critic of current Cuban regime, called for an immediate investigation into the massacre. I am calling for an immediate investigation into this massacre. United States authorities must determine whether any of the victims were U.S. citizens or legal residents and establish exactly what occurred. The regime in Cuba must be relegated to the dustbin of history for its countless crimes against humanity. So, from what I'm gathering, the speedboat pulled up on the Cubans, and the Cubans opened fire. Or no, the speedboat pulled up on the Cubans, opened fire, and then the Cubans returned fire. That's what I'm getting at it. Obviously, someone didn't fucking read the article. Any of my friends watching this, if you use Amazon wishlist, get yourself a P.O. box, or just stop using this shit, because this. Doy. See what's going on YouTube. This has been some wild shit that's been going on. Oh, this like video just literally just got posted. Save that for later. Let's see if we can find any news worth talking about. Do 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 do. State of the Union was a disaster. Here's what you missed. Biles, governor, interceded in private island dispute. Do 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 do. Oh, we were just reading about this.
And the deadly Cuba confrontation that left 4 people shot to death and 6 others injured. And we're learning that speedboat belonged to a man right here in South Florida.
That speedboat was also reported stolen to authorities before it made headlines this week.
Huh.
And Local 10's Bridget
Okay.
Matter joins us live in Homestead now with the breaking details that she's learned. To Bridget.
We are outside of a home in Homestead where we have
How
seen
much you wanna bet them
HSI
guys work
agents
for a
investigating,
three-letter
along with
agency?
Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office. It could be that this home, that this scene is connected to that shooting involving that boat off of Cuba's waters. This happening as both the Cuban government and the United States government are investigating what exactly happened.
Questions left unanswered one day after 4 men were killed and 6 others injured on board a speedboat in waters off the Cuban coast. A family member of one of the men on board, who wants to remain anonymous, spoke to me by phone from Cuba. She tells us the family is worried and does not know if their family member is dead or alive. She says they've been told he's one of the injured. The woman adds his family member is a U.S. citizen living in Florida. Local 10 has confirmed the boat the men were on was stolen from Big Pine Key before sailing south to the communist island. The Cuban government releasing their version of events, claiming the men on board had plans to infiltrate and terrorize the island. They say the men fired at Cuban Coast Guard members, injuring a commander.
Se detectó una lancha rápida infractora.
Items seized from the speedboat include assault rifles, handguns, improvised devices, body armor, telescopic sights, and camouflage uniforms.
We're going to find out exactly what happened here, and then we'll respond accordingly.
Lawmakers like Secretary of State Marco Rubio
What the hell is
aren't
up
buying
with this? This is
Cuba's
like the
story at
second
face
time
value,
this happened. There's
promising
another
a full
time.
investigation.
It is highly
A couple
unusual
months back,
to
these
see
guys-
shootouts in open sea like that. It's not something that happens every day. It's something, frankly,
they got
that hasn't
busted.
happened with Cuba,
Okay.
in a very long time.
Local 10 found federal agents
they
in
got busted by
unmarked cars
the
at the Monroe
FBI.
County
They had
property
this
where the
plan.
boat was docked.
Okay,
Agents
hang on, let
also
me pause
focused
this.
on this.
They were going to charter a boat down to Havana and liberate the entire country. Like they were just going to take out all the gangs and the military and the government and liberate the entire country. And they had this grand idea in their heads that the women were going to be so grateful and love them so much that they would just fall all over themselves and become these men's, like slaves, boink boink. But like the reason they got caught was because they tried to charter a boat from an undercover FBI agent. And this is like the second time something like this has happened. Like people are just like, yo, let's hop on a boat with some secondhand tactical gear, and we're just gonna run down to an island and cause some shit.
Abandoned white pickup truck. According to the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, the owner of the boat says the truck belonged to a man named Hector Cruz, who does tile work for him. He says Cruz does have family in Cuba. A neighbor says Tuesday night, a single male got out of the white truck and boarded the vessel, but she didn't think more of it. Thursday afternoon, the Cuban embassy in the United States listed a Hector Cruz as one of the 4 men killed in the shooting. The shootout comes as the communist regime is teetering on the edge of collapse. The island experiencing blackouts, a crippling economy, and a dire humanitarian crisis. The shooting potentially escalating already fragile tensions with the United States.
We are working to confirm that this scene is connected to this incident. We're working with law enforcement to find out more. And next at 10 o'clock, more on that phone call with that family member. We're live in Homestead. Bridget Matter, Local 10 News.
Okay. Fucking wild. Wild fucking shit. Whatever. Hey, look, there's my live stream.
The Justice Department withheld dozens of pages of material that appear to relate to allegations against Donald Trump himself. Allegations concerning.
I already heard all that shit.
We're going to take you now to Chappaqua, New York, where Hillary Clinton is speaking about her deposition with lawmakers earlier today. Let's take a listen.
As fully as I could, based on what I knew, and what I knew is what I said in my statement this morning. I never met Jeffrey Epstein, never had any connection or communication with him. I knew Ghislaine Maxwell casually as an acquaintance, but whatever they asked me, I did my very best to respond. It was disappointing that they refused to hold a public hearing, so I wouldn't have to be out here characterizing it for you. You could have seen it for yourself. We had asked for that. We think it would have been better for the committee and its efforts to gather whatever information they are seeking. We had a bit of a challenge in the beginning because we had agreed upon rules based on the fact it was going to be a closed hearing at their demand, and one of the members violated that rule, which was very upsetting because it suggested that they might violate other of our agreements. So we had to cease the hearing for a period of time until we could get assurances that no rules would be broken going forward, and we returned to answer questions repetitively, literally over and over again. I don't know how many times I had to say I did not know Jeffrey Epstein. I never went to his island. I never went to his homes. I never went to his offices. So it's on the record numerous times. It then got, at the end, quite unusual because I started being asked about UFOs and a series of questions about Pizzagate, one of the most vile, bogus conspiracy theories that was propagated on the internet that was serving as the basis of a member's questions to me. So I can only say that the best exchange that I had came at the very end when, contrary to every other deposition they have taken, no Republican member asked any questions about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell to anyone else they have deposed. And in fact, the Republican members didn't even show up for the deposition of Les Wexner. And when I said that, I had to point out that the only questions that any Republican member asked of any of the people they deposed was of former Attorney General Bill Barr when Chairman Comer asked him about the allegations, in his view, about Russia's involvement in my election in 2016. So at the very end of this hearing, after I made that point, I want to commend Chairman Comer for raising a series of significant questions that I responded to about the nature of the investigation and the areas that I thought should be explored. So I appreciated that. I want to see the truth come out. So that was a reassuring way to end a very long, repetitive deposition.
Madam Secretary, you spoke in your opening remarks about how heartbroken you have been for the Epstein survivors as these files have come out. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you have processed and reacted to the fact that the former president, your husband, Bill Clinton, is referenced in the Epstein files numerous times, including in some photos featuring women, and how have you been personally preparing for the deposition that is coming tomorrow? Are you 100% confident that there isn't anything that the former president knows about Epstein's crimes?
I am, and I think the chronology of the connection that he had with Epstein ended several years before anything about Epstein's criminal activities came to light, and that he was charged and sadly given a sweetheart deal, which, as I said in my statement, had that not happened, perhaps his predatory behavior could have been stopped earlier. But I think it is fair to say that the vast majority of people who had contact with him before his criminal pleas in 2008 were like most people. They did not know what he was doing. And I think that that is exactly what my husband will testify to tomorrow.
Madam Secretary, can I ask? Why was Ghislaine Maxwell?
Do you believe this was a fair hearing? And do you still want to testify publicly, even though you gave this deposition?
Oh, I'm not going to do it again. You know, they had a chance to do it in public, and I wish they had done it in public. And I think they're making the wrong decision, avoiding doing it in public. I thought it was very repetitive. I thought that they asked literally the same questions over and over again, which didn't seem to me to be very productive. And then, as I said, toward the end, you know, there were other questions that were totally off subject. So if they are going to fulfill their responsibilities to literally investigate the investigations, which is what they originally said was the scope of their work, I think they could have spent the day more productively.
Madam Secretary, can I ask? James Matthews from Sky News. Can I ask, why was Ghislaine Maxwell invited to your daughter Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010? She'd already been mentioned in a civil lawsuit by Virginia Giuffre before that. Jeffrey Epstein had already been convicted before that.
She came as the +1, the guest of someone who was invited. Thank you all.
What message does it say that
I don't know when the video will be out. I don't know when the transcript will be out. We've asked that they be out as quickly as possible, and then you can see everything. Thank you.
We heard from Bill Gates concerns about Epstein trying to blackmail him.
All right, you were just listening to former Secretary of State and former First Lady Hillary Clinton addressing reporters there in Chappaqua, New York, following a days-long closed-door deposition by the House Oversight Committee there in New York. The former Secretary of State saying flatly that Republicans, in her estimation, are making the wrong decision by not doing this in public. She said this deposition, which lasted the course of the day, was often repetitive. She says that at times it veered into different questions that were unrelated to, in her opinion, the Epstein investigation, including UFOs, and that debunked a conspiracy theory about Pizzagate. But the former secretary also saying that tomorrow she believes that her husband, who is set to testify before this same body, will.
Okay, well, enough of that for tonight. I will catch you all later. It's like 10:30 here, so I gotta get some sleep and go to work tomorrow. Anybody else watching this after the fact, enjoy, subscribe, like, comment, cash at me some money. Alright, peace.